A special thank you to each of our subscribers who make this channel possible. Here's today's story. As the clock ticks down at the United Nations annual climate talks in Baku, Azerbaijan, developing nations are making a bold demand for $1.3 trillion to address the catastrophic impacts of climate change and to build sustainable energy systems. With just 2 days remaining in the negotiations, representatives from vulnerable countries have expressed frustration over the lack of commitment from wealthier nations to provide the necessary funding. The urgency of the situation is palpable, as negotiators grapple with the challenge of reaching a consensus on how much financial support will be allocated to help those most affected by climate change. The stakes are high, with experts estimating that at least $1 trillion is needed annually to effectively combat the growing climate crisis. However, the proposals on the table from developed nations fall significantly short of this figure, raising concerns about the future of climate finance and the ability of developing countries to adapt to and mitigate the effects of climate change. Adonia Iber, chair of the G77+ China Group of Developing Nations, emphasized the necessity of establishing a clear financial figure to guide the negotiations. "We need a figure," Iber stated. "Then the rest will follow. But we need a headline." This sentiment resonates with many negotiators who are eager to see concrete commitments from wealthier nations, particularly in light of their historical responsibility for greenhouse gas emissions. The discussions have centered around 3 critical components: the total amount of funding, the balance between grants and loans, and the identities of the contributing nations. Australia's Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Chris Bowen, noted the wide range of proposals circulating among negotiators, including figures of $900 billion, $600 billion, and even $200 billion. However, many developing nations view these amounts as insufficient to meet their urgent needs. Diego Pacheco Balanza, chair of the like-minded group negotiating bloc, voiced a common concern among developing countries, stating, "That's not enough." Developed countries whose legal obligations it is to provide finance continue to shift their responsibility to developing countries. The demand for public grants, rather than loans, reflects a desire for sustainable support that does not further burden developing nations. The ongoing negotiations have been complicated by the reluctance of key donor countries, including the European Union and the United States, to disclose their financial commitments without a clearer understanding of the overall agreement. Additionally, calls for emerging economies like China and Saudi Arabia to contribute to the financing efforts have added another layer of complexity to the discussions. As the deadline looms, negotiators are preparing for a long night ahead, with a slimmed-down draft expected to be released soon. European climate envoy Wopke Hoekstra acknowledged the challenges ahead, stating, "I'm sure we will have some long days and hours ahead of us. This will be a very steep climb." The lead negotiator from Azerbaijan, Yalchin Rafiev, urged participants to pick up the pace and work collaboratively to achieve meaningful outcomes. The atmosphere at the summit has grown increasingly tense, with division and discontent becoming evident as the proposed global finance deal presented 2 starkly contrasting options that left many delegates dissatisfied. The crux of COP29 is to determine the financial obligations of developed nations to assist their developing counterparts in combating climate change, a critical aspect of the global effort to limit the damage caused by rising temperatures. With the summit set to conclude on Friday, the latest draft of the negotiating text revealed that many key questions remain unresolved, including what constitutes the annual funding figure and who will be responsible for contributing. Panama's lead negotiator, Juan Carlos Monterrey Gomez, expressed frustration with the state of the negotiations, likening the process to a tragic spectacle, as delegates grapple with weak proposals that fail to meet the pressing needs of developing countries. Economists have underscored the urgency of the situation, asserting that developing nations require at least $1 trillion annually by the end of the decade to effectively address the impacts of climate change. The latest draft document, while streamlined, highlights the deep divisions between developed and developing nations, with some groups advocating for grants and others seeking a broader definition of what constitutes financial support. As discussions continue, negotiators are acutely aware that the world is on the brink of crossing critical temperature thresholds that could unleash even more catastrophic climate impacts. The urgency of the situation is underscored by the consensus among climate scientists that immediate and substantial action is necessary to avert the worst effects of climate change. The future of fossil fuels also looms large over COP29, with Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev defending his country's oil and gas industry against Western criticism. The latest draft text acknowledges the need for a transition away from fossil fuels, but lacks concrete steps to achieve this goal. As negotiators work tirelessly to finalize an agreement, the pressure is mounting to deliver a robust climate finance deal that reflects the needs of vulnerable nations and ensures their ability to adapt and thrive in a changing world. With only 2 days remaining, the call for action is clear. Maldives Environment Minister Thorik Ibrahim emphasized the need for urgency, stating, "We have just 2 more days left. We need to really work hard to get this COP a successful COP." The outcome of these negotiations will have far-reaching implications for the future of climate finance and the global response to the climate crisis. That's all for this story. We upload videos every day covering many different subjects, so hit that subscribe button to stay informed. Thanks for watching.